And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, we're going to take a look now at a brand new Australian film that has got some special screenings, and then you'll have to stay tuned for what happens with this movie next, because as you heard in the interview that you just heard from the director and the producer, this film is going to have a life after those screenings. We're just going to have to wait and see what it's going to be. It's called Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism, and it's based on a couple of true cases here in Australia. The film centres around a couple, Lara Levondi, played by Georgia Ayres, and Ron, played by Dan Ewing. Now, there's something up with Lara. She's acting strange. She's doing things like dancing outside in the nude. And Ron is worried about her. She's been seeing a counsellor, but Ron is convinced that perhaps it's more than what the counsellor is letting on, that perhaps Lara is actually possessed. In order to try and explore that, he tries to get a pastor, Daniel, played by Tim Pocock, to have a look at Lara and see what is happening. And from there, things go rapidly wrong. And I don't want to kind of go too much into spoiler territory, but it very quickly becomes a case of Doctor, played by Eliza Matengu, versus spiritual leader Daniel, with what is actually going on in Lara's life. Lee, I know that you love exorcism movies, but this is an exorcism movie with a difference because it's got a true crime element to it. What did you think of Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism?
Look, I think the film brings forward a good topic of considering mental illness versus demon possession, and I guess what society both accepts and rejects when considering how to help people living with visions, various personalities, and struggling to have a functional life. Now, I'm sure there are valid cases for spiritual intervention, and this film highlights the dangers of inexperienced and ambitious cult leaders who prey on people in crisis and who use control and violence for their position, and who lead a group of followers who hang on their every word without questioning or seeking truth. So yeah, while I believe in spiritual warfare and the spirit world, I think this film particularly highlights, because it's based on a true case, that it can be dangerous to do exorcisms, especially when left in the hands of someone with power and control issues. I think it does highlight the power and dominance a partner can have over their loved one, especially, I guess, when they're frustrated, they want to help, they're at the end of their tether of how to help their loved one. But then it shows and highlights effects of trauma and choices that are taken away from the person with the mental health or possession, depending on your view on that. So I guess you sit with this film with an uneasy feeling throughout the whole film. It is intense, the story is heavy, but the performances are strong, and that is why you sit like that. I think through this movie I would like to have seen a little more about the commune and learnt more about some of the people that lived in that commune. So more characterization of some of those people that are involved in, I would say, the cult. There are some beautiful moments in the flashbacks and shows that followed by tragedy, really, for for the main character, Lara. I think you see some family life and you see some things that happen and it all unfolds, and then I guess it shows you what trauma can do to you and how your brain might respond to trauma. There is a beautiful shot, or one of my favorite shots is of a coffin. Now I won't give too much away, but the camera's looking down on the coffin and the set has a lot of detail to it, And while it's a sad scene, there's still beauty to it. I think it's very creatively done, and I think it's just a wonderful shot in the film. I think, again, because it's such it is a true story. It is an Australian story too.
Yeah, it's actually based on a couple of stories, but yeah, one in particular, but a couple of other stories as well. So
yes, I think at the end, as with a lot of true stories, you get text on the screen of explaining what happened later on. I would like to have seen part of the court case as part of the story rather than just text at the end. I think it would have given an extra, extra level to the film.
Yeah.
Also, with that text, it leaves you feeling like our court systems are crap, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that the level of justice doesn't always fit the crime. And that's true of many, many cases that we see unfolding in the newspaper every day. But I think you sit leaving with a heavy feeling, wanting more than what was given in this case.
Yeah, as you probably heard when I did the interview with Nick Kazakis, the director, I like his style of directing. I loved his first feature, Plague, because he's one of those directors that seems to be able to get characterization onto the screen in a great way. And he's aided here as well by Alexander Angus Wilson, the writer. But I think this is interesting because, of course, Nick's first film was a horror that had zombies in it, but it was more about the characters and how they responded to the zombie apocalypse. And I find that with this as well. Like, yes, this is... it's kind of wrongly labelled an exorcism film because, yeah, it has an exorcism in it, but it's very much a true crime kind of thriller.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting with this film was I almost wondered whether the character of Detective Chambers, played by John Wood, needed to be brought in earlier, because I found myself looking at this spiritual leader, Daniel, and thinking, is he the real deal? And something goes horribly wrong. Is he a charlatan that feeds off being popular and he almost knows that this is going to go wrong? Or number 3, does he really believe that he is, as he puts it, a man of God that can heal people like that? Like, because you don't get to see it from Daniel's point of view, I mean, it hit me after I watched this movie that perhaps Daniel is as mentally unwell as what Lara is.
I think that's why I said that I would like to have seen a bit more of the court case, because
you
would have then seen more of the investigation with Detective Chambers for a start, but you hopefully would have seen come out of that the state of mind of the character of Daniel.
Yeah, because there's an interesting line when Detective Chambers comes in, and I'm not sure if I mentioned, but he's played by Aussie legend John Wood, where he says, I've had trouble with you people before. Like, there's obviously, it sounds like there's been issues before between Daniel's cult or church, as he puts it, and the police. So what has happened previously for that to be there? Like, because then that kind of took a little bit of the mystery away from Daniel for me. Like, it obviously something has happened in the past where the police have been involved with him. But I really thought that the power in this film came from the performances. I thought Georgia Ayres, Dan Ewing, and Tim Pocock were just absolutely amazing in this. I know it's kind of weird saying that Tim Pocock was good because of the character he's playing, but
he is an intense character and he carries that out very well.
Yeah, and like if you listened to the interview earlier, Georgia Ayres was tied up for a lot of this film, and a lot of care had to be made during the making of this film because there's some pretty brutal scenes. I thought Dan Ewing took his acting to another level in this film as well. I've been a big rap for him ever since, as I'm a fan of the Occupation franchise that he's part of. But here, we don't get to see him play the action hero. He's more the worried husband, and there's a lot more character acting that comes out here. But yeah, I thought those three were absolutely brilliant with their performances here, and I'm still convinced that Nick Kazakis is one of the next big things in Australian directing. I think with Plague and now this one, it really goes to show that he is an amazing director. I hope we don't lose him to the music video world like we did after Plague. He made a lot of music videos after Plague, and it's been far too long between drinks for him with feature films. So hopefully he makes another feature film really, really soon. But Lee, what are you going to rate Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism, out of 5, and why?
I'm giving it 3.5. I agree that the acting was absolutely brilliant, very strong performances, and very believable.
Yeah, it's realistic.
Yeah, and to the point where the husband, Ron, you see him as a desperate man trying to help his partner, but at the same time, he's so intense that it almost comes across as domestic violence in a way of power and control. And it really shows that the character of Lara had no choice in what was happening to her. And yeah, I guess just being a true crime story, it's really important that those performances were strong, and they were very strong.
Yeah. Like we've said before a little bit about the genre, but what genre would you throw this into? Because it is kind of a horror film, but at the same time it's true crime
crime and drama too. It's all kind of rolled into one. There is suspense in it as well, which goes into a bit of a thriller theme too. So I think it's all roll into one.
Yeah, I'm going to give this one 3.5 out of 5 as well. I thought that it's just such an interesting film, and like I know a lot of people out there are going to see the term exorcism in the title and think that this is just going to be another run-of-the-mill horror, but it's so much more than that, like with its characterization and the performances of its leads. So it's interesting, and it's even hard to say where you're going to be able to see this film. There are special screenings of this film out there, so make sure you check subcultureentertainment.com to see where those screenings are. Try and catch it. Try and support Australian films, because the way that films like this get legs is because people go along to these special screenings, and they're Q&A screenings. So you're going to get to meet the cast, director, and producer, like depending on where you go to see it. But get behind it, because this is, I think, an important Australian film, and I am hoping, and don't quote me on this, but I'm hoping that this film gets a general cinema release after all of these screenings. But make sure that you keep listening to this show, because we will definitely give you the news of where you can see this film after these screenings. So both Lee and I gave Godless, the Eastfield Exorcism, 3.5 out of 5. Check where the screenings are and go and see one that's close to you. You're on centralcoastradio.com.